Let's see if it still works. See here in a minute. See what happens. Cindy. Woohoo! I've got somebody watching. There you guys come. I know it's been a while, right? Jill, it has been a long time. I don't even know if this is going. If you guys are on Facebook and you see this, let me know. All right, guys, if I can remember how to do this and remember the things to say, hey, Tiffany, hey, Tamara, Linda, okay, I got Facebook family here too. Hey, guys, it's Jim with Crawfordology. I know I haven't been around for a while, and there's a whole lot going on, right? There I am to prove that I'm actually podcasting. So there's a whole lot of stuff that's been happening. Of course, you guys know what got us, to slow down. We actually have more views right now than we've had in years because Facebook is starting to undo the limitation on Crawfordology. So if they continue to do that, we will continue to broadcast. If they don't, folks, I'm telling you, there's no way you can see us. There's no way you can even find us. Shelly, how are you? It's great to see you guys. Great to see you guys. Hey, listen, so there's a lot going on in the world, has been a lot going on in the world for the last 3-4 months, and a lot to talk about. But today we're just going to focus on a couple of things, and I'm going to ask you guys for your feedback, for your viewpoints, and we're going to talk about those things. Particularly today, feel a little bit somber. As you guys know, a lot of the work that we do is with the military, with our ThreatWorks folks, and from Friday on, it has been a particularly difficult time to watch the folks in Afghanistan who were really struggling, and to see the U.S. pull out. I think there's no one who could possibly watch people running after planes on the tarmac. If you can just imagine that, think of the power of a giant jet, much more the power of a giant C-5 firing up to go down the runway, and people so desperate to leave their country, so desperate to get away from the Taliban and the fear of what lies before them, that they're willing to hang on to the outside of the plane, try and tuck themselves away in the wheel wells. It's just heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking to watch. We're going to go tonight, and we're going to have a little bit of input from H.R. McMaster, and we're going to hear some of the things that he's saying about Afghanistan. So I'll shut up here in a minute, and we'll hear from him. But I really want to hear what you all are thinking. I want to hear your input. I miss hearing your view. I love the fact that I can come here, and in just a few minutes, if Facebook and YouTube are fair, I can get the whole audience up and get a lot of thoughts coming out of you guys quickly. So Judy, I see you here too. It's fantastic to see all of you as you're popping in. So I'm looking over here at the screen and kind of paying attention as you guys do. So without further ado, let me jump over to the browser. Of course, American One is our site. Crawfordology is the name of this podcast. And if you haven't done it already, or even if you decided not to do it and to undo it because I wasn't podcasting, please come back and like and subscribe. Find us, look down here, subscribe on Facebook, on YouTube, follow us. I promise you we're going to get back to this. We just need the Facebook power folks to leave us alone. Let us talk. Let us be free. Let us not be constrained by folks with the thinking like the Taliban, right? And with that, what I'd like to do for many of you, the word that I'm about to say could be a bad word, right? So PBS, So what I got, hey, John Graham, great to see you. Dale, fantastic. I'm going to share the PBS News Hour. And I tell you, you can have some different opinions on it. Of course, that's the way it is, right? We get to have different opinions. What I'd like to do is I'd like to share what H.R. McMaster is going to say. It's going to take about 5-10 minutes, so please hang in here with me. Hang in here, all right? Let's watch it. I'll pause. I'll come back and forth. I will try not to keep us too long watching this, but I think there's some worthwhile things to hear here.
And we continue our look at the fall of Afghanistan with retired Army General H.R. McMaster. He was the National Security Advisor to former President Trump. He's now a senior fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. General McMaster, thank you very much for joining us. The core argument from President Biden is that it was not in the interest of the United States to keep troops in Afghanistan any longer, whether it was 1 month, a year, or 10 years. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think it's just wrong on a couple of counts, Judy. First of all, we were there to preserve and protect our own interests, our security interests. We know for a fact, right? We know from historical experience that terrorist organizations, when they control territory and populations and resources, that they become orders of magnitude more dangerous, right? We saw that with the mass murder attacks of 9/11. We saw it again when Vice President Biden thanked President Obama for ending the war in Iraq. Well,
folks, this is an important fact that is being left out of the conversation today. If you go back to why we went to Afghanistan to begin with, it was to manage these people who want to do harm to the U.S., for us to find a place that we could go, deal with them on their own ground, where all of the society here in America would not have to deal with this. Afghanistan was the perfect place to do that. It's where they were home based. There's never been a country of terrorists before. But in this case, we have now just ceded defeat to really 75,000 soldiers. So H.R. McMaster is very spot on here when he's talking about this. Just remember that the true reason we went to Afghanistan wasn't to nation build. It was to stop the idea that this country living a lifestyle of 500 years ago would no longer be able to reach out and develop the threat and bring it here to the U.S.
Hey, wars don't end when one party disengages. And of course, in Iraq, we saw Al-Qaeda in Iraq morph into ISIS, the most destructive terrorist organization in history. And then, of course, we had to go back. What I found also that was fundamentally, I think, wrong about the president's approach here is that he thinks that a lost war in Afghanistan isn't going to have consequences. We're already seeing the horrible humanitarian consequences, but there will be severe political consequences in connection with our credibility with our allies and partners in other countries who will wonder how reliable we are. But of course, it will have big security implications in connection with jihadist terrorists who will declare victory over the world's only superpower.
Well, I want to ask you.
Of course, they didn't defeat us. We defeated ourselves, Judy, which is what's so.
So another point here that HR makes is they did not defeat us, right? They were patient enough to know that our own political leanings, our public opinion, would eventually cause us to lose interest and move out of Afghanistan. Now, I want to say something here that I think is important to say because it relates back to President Trump, and we have to recall that it was President Trump who decided to leave Afghanistan. So there's nothing wrong with the idea here of leaving Afghanistan. It's the fact that we're leaving Afghanistan in such a disorderly way without any sort of stability behind. This was really just, from a partnering standpoint, to me, the worst possible approach to leave a partner. We came into their country, we pushed out their government, we put in our own government, we worked with them for 20 years, and then we just bolt out. It doesn't make sense. We've done this in Iraq now, we've done this in Afghanistan, and it's a sad day.
Sad about it.
And I apologize for interrupting, but I do want to ask you about the terrorist threat because we hear the president saying This is something that is coming from a number of countries right now on the African continent, in Libya, in Yemen, and he named other countries, and that this is something the U.S. doesn't have to have boots on the ground to watch and to take care of. What about that argument?
It's a pipe dream, Judy. The way that we've made ourselves safe really since 9/11 is by partnering with partners across the world who actually bear the brunt of the fight against jihadist terrorists. You know, the president disparaged Afghan soldiers today, but we should remember that tens of thousands of them gave their lives to protect the freedoms that they've enjoyed since 2001, but also to protect us really from modern day barbarians. I mean, Afghanistan is in many ways on a modern day frontier between barbarism and civilization. Just right across the border, Judy, there are over 20 U.S. designated jihadist terrorist organizations. And a victory for the Taliban, a reestablishment of the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, is a victory for Al-Qaeda and those other groups. And so how could it be that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Judy.
You know, I apologize for interrupting, but I do want to get in several more questions. And one is the president repeatedly saying that Afghan troops, how can you ask U.S. troops to fight for a country when the Afghan troops themselves are giving up so quickly?
Well, if we think what led to this collapse, really, it occurred across two administrations, the Trump and the Biden administrations, where essentially we had this delusion that we could actually partner with the Taliban against terrorists, when in fact we were enabling a terrorist organization itself. And this is the negotiations with, you know, the Taliban Political Commission in Doha. That was always a pipe dream, Judy, and it was a key element of our self-delusion. And then what we did is we delivered really tremendous psychological blows to the Afghan people, Afghan leaders, and Afghan security forces on our way out. You know, Judy, if we were going to leave Afghanistan, why didn't we just leave? Why did we make concession after concession on our way out that forced the Afghan government to release 5,000 of some of the most heinous people on earth?
And some of
went
those
right back to terrorism, and then of course it went right back to the battlefield, as we know, right?
So what HR is talking about here are the discussions that were happening in Doha leading up to the drawdown. So the agreement, trying to come with terrorists and negotiate a settlement. You've basically given all your chips away when you say we're leaving, and what we're looking for is a little bit of peace before we leave, right? We need some peace so we can leave with our head up. We can leave with a little bit of dignity here. We don't want to be here anymore. As soon as you tell your adversary what you're going to do, what your end state is, it's very easy for them to say, well, you know, we'll give you peace. We'll pause the war if you do this. You know, give us those 5,000 terrorists back. We want those guys out of the jails now so that we can get them positioned for when you leave. It's things like this that are very concerning to me, and they happen both under the Trump administration as well as the Biden administration. I think what H.R. McMaster is talking about here is very accurate when it comes to how our statesmanship is failing when we intervene in these countries. We should either have a policy in the U.S. that we aren't going to do this, or when we do this, we're seeing it through. You know, in South Korea, we've been there since the armistice. Well, since before the armistice, since the war. In Japan, we've been there since the armistice. We've been in Europe. We're in Germany. We're in Italy. We have military bases all over the world, and they're there to not only sustain our reach into these various areas, but they also help to stabilize those countries. We were stabilizing the country with 2,500 troops. That probably was not sustainable, because that was in part due to the Doha negotiations, the idea that we could make a deal with terrorists, people that we identify as terrorists. I want to be clear. It's a completely different worldview than we have. There's probably no one listening right now who has a worldview that's at all in common with the Taliban. We have been living in a fantastic society here in the United States. We have no idea what it's like to live in those countries and to live under the rule of someone like the Taliban. Let's continue.
And then
some
why
of those
did we not insist on a ceasefire?
And again, my apology for interrupting, but some of those concessions, of course, came during former President Trump's administration when you were there as National Security Advisor. I do want to ask you, General McMaster.
No, Judy, I have to correct you on that. That was not when I was there as National Security Advisor. When I was there, I think the president put into place the only reasoned and sustainable approach that we've had in Afghanistan, but then he abandoned it. And you're correct. I mean, I'm not making partisan points here. I'm saying that this is really an American catastrophe, and it's a catastrophe that was going to have, already we see, profound humanitarian consequences, but it will have profound political and security consequences as well.
General H.R. McMaster, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
So, folks, that's H.R. McMaster on the situation. Now, I want to go back and just give you, and this is PBS. So, I in all fairness, this is PBS broadcasting with sort of a rebroadcast here. It's the episode from today. I want to go back and share with you, if you haven't seen some of the images, and I'm just going to let it mute. But while we're talking here, I'll let this play. So, forgive me. You'll see Judy, although she may be better than me. But we'll let her play while we kind of talk through this. And you can see in the background the Taliban moving into Afghanistan, moving into the capital, all the places that they have actually taken very quickly. And, there's going to be all sorts of Monday morning quarterbacks wondering, why is it that the Taliban was able to so quickly do this? Why is it that there were so many things that allowed people to cede headway so easily? Here's that terrible shot of the people climbing on the Air Force plane, the big C-5 here, and they're just climbing up. I mean, you can imagine the desperation, the sense of urgency when they show the traffic, they show the people climbing. It is just sad. It's one of the saddest images I've seen, to know that people were actually willing to take off in those aircraft and fall from the sky. It is a iconic end. I grew up with my dad was in Vietnam, and I grew up with the images of Vietnam and thinking about what those look like. And we've seen it many times in social media, the comparison of Saigon and now Afghanistan in the final days of Kabul. We saw this today. So President Biden comes out and takes a minute off vacation to come in and address the American people. I'm not going to play this. I'm sure you've all heard it 50 times if you can listen to it. And without being disrespectful to the president, I just have a huge disagreement that he imagined this was a withdrawal that was I don't know. Was this the maximum of their planning and capability? I think not. I know not. I mean, we have people who could have planned a much better withdrawal. Not having troops positioned more quickly to manage what's happening in not just the capital city, but in all the cities. Here we have these Afghan Taliban now running checkpoints. You can see that there's a tremendous number of people who are struggling in the streets. The traffic is jam-packed. And, here's the troops back at the airport and, trying to stave off a significant size force if they decide to assault the airport with thousands of people. Now, will they do that? I pray not. I think we have a great deal of support there now, and with another 5,000 troops on the way. So the drawdown requires a military action to manage the drawdown. Sadly, we're going to see now folks from the Taliban with U.S. weapon systems and equipment. And then there's this Ashraf Ghani, simply leaves the country. The president leaves the country. And I want to talk through that for a minute, because if there's ever a moment that you think of as being iconic, when the leadership falls, and this happens in any country, it would happen here in the U.S. If the president flees the country for fear, what sort of leadership, what sort of model does that leave? And by the way, this stuff from Jane Ferguson is very good. If you haven't seen it, I can highly recommend it. She's very critical, but very fair of what's happening. She's been in Afghanistan several times, and she's there tonight as all this is happening. You'll see the different leaders of the Taliban. This leader, I cannot recall his name, was actually a negotiated release under Trump last year. Well, there we go. Baradar, the senior Taliban leader. And so there's a whole lot of things happening there, a whole lot of badness. And my gosh, for these young Afghans that are fighting in the defense force, there we go. There's Saigon in 1975. You see the families rushing in. And this is some of the comparison of Saigon versus what's happening in Afghanistan right now. Look, there's a lot of criticisms to the Afghan Defense Force, and maybe some of that is rightly earned. You do not change 1,000 years of tribal culture in 20 years. It's definitely going to take, for any country that's lived like this, it's going to take a tremendous amount of time for those folks to get back, or to get to a point where they are living in a modern world. 20 years sounds like a lot to us. It's the blink of an eye. It's the blink of an eye. And they needed generational change. So if you were born when we entered Afghanistan, you're 20 years old now. You're 20, you could be a man, but you're not a man that's going to bring that kind of change, right? You need these guys to be 30, 40 years old in the leadership, respected, and able to really pull their weight. They're not there yet. So I think, and look, I was never a fan of going into Afghanistan long term. I felt like the punitive action was probably the appropriate action, to say, hey, this is where these guys set up. We're going to come in and whack them really hard. I was not a fan of Bush going into Afghanistan. But once the country makes a decision that we're going there, the sad thing is that we lack continuity. We lack that ability to have leadership that continues. And I hate to see that. I wish very much that we had set up a plan going in. This is going to be our exit plan, and here's how long we're going to be here. I think anyone to have said it would be less than 40 or 50 years would have just been kidding themselves. Could we have sustained something? Could we have kept the peace in Afghanistan with 5,000 troops and some air bases? Maybe so. Barney, I don't think I agree with you at all that the U.S. government's the most crooked in the entire world. I can't agree with that. But I can say we do make some terrible decisions. And some of those decisions are made simply because of partisanship. Some of those decisions are made, simply because there are people trying to score political points versus really having, a conversation that is substantial, significant about change and about the ways to make change. There's definitely more than one school of thought. I see that. That's good, man. That creative tension that's caused when people disagree, and I'm not talking about the partisan Republican Democrat disagreement. I'm talking about really 2 approaches, 5 approaches, 10 approaches to solving a problem, and letting those things get worked out. That's one of the things the Department of Defense does really well, is they do think through critically issues and think through critically the issues that are in front of them. So I'm for that. So I want to go to the comments a little bit. You guys have been very active tonight, very, very active, and I am anxious. Let me just move this screen over so I can look at you all as I'm reading, not otherwise. So let's see what we got. One other thing I want to cover, and look, there are lots of people who would be very critical of Karzai, right? You remember this guy? So Karzai, who was the president for about 13 years, right? But I do want to say Karzai's still there, and I assume he's still there tonight. But Karzai sent a message to the Taliban. He created a video with his 3 young daughters there, and he said, hey, I want to find the message itself. Yeah, Taliban, okay. Where is that message? Where is the message? Folks, I thought it was nice. So he served as the president from 2001 to 2014. And he said, hey, stay in your homes, remain calm. He added that he and other political leaders will continue their efforts to solve the issue peacefully. President Ghani left the country with his core team. I don't know what that means, and I don't know where they went, and apparently a lot of people don't know where they went. But Karzai, who interestingly says, hey, I'm here in Kabul with my girls, and I asked the Taliban to provide security and safety for the people, he said in a video message. So, he is, let's see, Karzai, if I recall, is the chief of one of the tribes there in Afghanistan. And you say what you like, but look, that's really some leadership in action. If either he was a shill at all the time for the Taliban, or he's actually there really trying to work through this thing. Now, I don't know him. I've never interacted with him. I know people who've interacted with him. And I'm going to ask the question because I want to get their feedback. There are certainly some things that jump out at me. All right, let's get to the comments here. You guys have a bunch of comments, and I just moved through them a little bit too fast. Here we go. All right, Paul Carlton says, I'm torn up as there are American troops running out of supplies and fearing the worst as a second embassy taken evacuation. As a fiasco, people are falling from the sky to try and hold on to flying American planes. Biden's weakness has shown the world's greatest fear is going to be Benghazi as Biden sips his juice. Our troops are in fear that this will be their last day. We need leadership in the White House now, as many are concerned for loved ones there. So Paul, I'm sure that the president is concerned about this situation, and as an American, I can't believe anything else. And unfortunately, being concerned and being equipped may be two different things, but I think he is genuinely concerned. As a career politician, I think it's hard for them not to see things through the lens of politics. So you noticed in his press conference today, it was not so much about, just taking responsibility and moving forward. There was a good deal of, I'm dealing with what Trump gave me, and I'm trying to make the best of it. That I don't really pass on that. I think that in reality, what's happened here is that Trump did make plans for the exit, but he's not the one executing the exit. When you become president, you can change that, or you can plan that. And I think our execution here of the exit has been dismal. Linda Hansen says, I'm so very sad for what's going on in our country and elsewhere. The pullout in Afghanistan is such a disaster. Everyone, please continue to pray for our country and those people in Afghanistan who are going through this horrible takeover. Yeah, amen. God is in control of all these things and all the things that happen in the world. So prayers for the people in Afghanistan, prayers that the Taliban's heart would be softened, and prayers that the young girls and women who have grown up for 20 years knowing something much more Western-like, who are now about to be shocked. A number of the soft warriors here in America are trying to do evacuations. They're trying to help get at least the commandos out. We have a number of Afghan former military folks who work for us, and I just have to tell you, my heart is breaking for them, for their families. I've already heard that the Taliban has gone to some of the families that made it out, and they are basically taking their family members hostage and saying, you have to return to face punishment, or we're going to kill your family. It's you know, it's just unbelievable. Richard Quinn says, and the Chinese are rattling against Taiwan because Joe is paralyzed with either fear or just don't care. God, please help us. So, Richard, not only are the Chinese, and they've been doing that, by the way, before this. They've been, since the election, doing flyovers, maybe even before the election, doing flyovers in Taiwan. Russia has their eyes on Georgia and Ukraine again. Each day, ceding a little bit more ground to these maniacal machines that are the great competition. Look, I feel as if China, we just don't know we're at war with China. We're at economic war, at influence war. I have little doubt that China has armed and supplied the Taliban and the people we've been fighting against in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I think that they do those types of proxy wars to try out their stuff. Hey, I need to get some field testing. I'll send it right to you. Keith Pritchard says we need Trump back. Look, Keith, I don't think that Trump, and many of you have commented, I don't think Trump's ever coming back. I don't think Trump is likely to run again. I could be wrong, but I don't think it's going to happen. Paul Carlton says, you can't support our White House or administration as corruption is run wide open like our borders, and now Biden has sacrificed our troops. When you don't support military, they're low on supplies. They're fearing the worst, as weak leadership can destroy a nation. Yeah, I think that's a little bit about what we're talking about with Ghani. Weak leadership can make it bad. John Graham, how are you, John? Is it true they found out the Democrats cheated, and the Trump will be back soon? No, John. I don't think that Trump is coming back, and I don't think that even if they found out that the Democrats cheated, that anybody in Washington on either party would be willing to admit it. And I'll tell you why. I think that John, if the country doesn't trust the elections, doesn't trust that they can go vote out and vote in the people of their choice, that would be devastating generally and chaotic. And I think that alone would be enough reason for them to say, okay, what's happened. We have to move forward. Debbie Airing says, this is completely on the Biden administration. They need to resign, step down. Everything they touch turns to ruin. Debbie, it certainly feels like, with inflation, with the things that are happening, you look at gas prices, food prices, you look at the idea that they are continuing these executive orders that overreach the federal government's power. People who are getting subsidized don't have to pay rent. How do you fix that for the guys who own the buildings and have to pay rent to the bank? They have to pay a mortgage. I don't know. There's a whole lot of things that are just getting mucked up by bad policies and buying votes. There's just so much. There's so much. I mean, truly, we could have podcasted every hour and probably found something new that would at least be troubling. Now, I don't know, and in fact, I would tell you, I don't believe that people set out to do this. I don't think that Joe Biden is the devil and is trying to do harm. However, I don't agree with a lot of the policies, and just as a free market person, I think that free markets are better. I think that to have a free market, you have to manage the borders. To have a social services inside a country, you have to be able to manage the population and who's eligible for those. Otherwise, you just sort of turn on the come get free money list, and that's what happens. So Richard Byrd says Bush Jr. is the one that wanted the Taliban to be part of the new government. That would be the same thing if Trump drains the swamp and left Obama, Biden, Hillary, and Pelosi to be part of our new government. The enemy can't be part of any new government. Yeah, I think there were some bad thoughts about how to do that. Tiffany Harris says, nothing like undoing years of work in 8 months' time. Yeah, Tiffany, I think this has been coming without a plan, without a sustained plan. And I want to go back, this decision was made during the Trump administration. I totally agreed with the decision to leave Afghanistan. I just believe that leaving was not leaving 100%. That leaving would be, hey, we're still going to have a force there. We're still going to do some things. Mike Murphy, I see you. Hey, what really makes me mad as hell is the fact that the Taliban, PLO, and Al Qaeda were broke until Biden tried to get back into bed with Iran and froze all their assets. Just ask Israel how that worked out for them. Now Afghanistan. Yeah, we're gonna have to be vigilant. We're gonna see things that continue to happen here. John Graham says, I think that Biden sold his soul to be president. I don't know if it's that maniacal. I think that people, John, who spend 50 years, good evening, Carol. I think people who spend 50 years in government sometimes get power hungry, and they just believe that, hey, I'm the right guy to fix this. I am the right person. And whatever happened in the election, as luck would have it, we get pummeled with it. Dale Reichert says, Jim, I think that a lot of people feel the elections are fixed. I believe there's a 55% voter doubt on the 2020 election. A lot of people continue to push against that. And I'm going to need to see some more evidence versus just the comments. One of the challenges that I want to give back to you all when it comes to looking critically at the information that's coming our way, we should hold ourselves accountable to the same level that we would ask, the other side. So if for example, we make an allegation, we should have something to back it up with that's evidentiary, not just, hey, I think that's what happened, therefore it's what happened. And I realize many of us, I include myself, did not feel that the come on, man, says Loretta. I did not feel that the election was indicative of the way the country thought and believed. But here's what I want to say is sometimes we are so invested in our opinion. Sometimes we find ourselves in these echo chambers of sorts where we hang out with people who think and feel like we do, and we really can't understand how the other side's feeling or what they're thinking or how they make decisions. Since the election, I've had a chance to have a conversation with a number of people who I would have said are conservatives. And many of them have told me that they did not vote for Trump because his mean tweets, his bad attitude, all these different things. So in some ways, and we talked about this during the election, we talked about it leading up to, the inauguration, that what the president failed to do was help himself in areas that he could have helped himself. And that's sad, but I just want to say, if we hold ourselves to the same standard that we expect the Democrats and the opposition to hold themselves to, we're going to come out on top in the end. We just need to have a good discussion, an honest discussion, and look at the facts. Ben Franklin, it's been a while since I've seen Ben Franklin, but I'm glad he's here. Ben said he just wanted the title. Even if he has to resign, he just gets the title of 46th. And that's all possible, Ben. That's all possible. I can't say that I know that to be true, but I absolutely have my own belief that's not too far off that, Ben. Like I said, sometimes people feel like I've been here a long time, You guys owe it to me. I've done what I've done for the party, and now it's my turn. So Rebecca says that she feels that Obama's making the decisions for Biden. I don't think so. I think he's kind of checked out. From what I saw the other day at that party, his birthday, his 60th, he was partying it up pretty good, in a social distancing sort of way. Linda, you make a great point. Linda Christensen says, feel bad for the returning troops. Can't imagine the PTSD they're bringing back with them because of the actions of Biden. Not just the actions of Biden, I would say, but the circumstances, the entire thing, the idea that it takes a country time to build up legs and stabilize itself and create systems and a framework that allows it to really breathe in the idea of liberty, right? The idea that, hey, we can do this, especially if you've been suppressed for so many years that you've been taught that you will do it this way, you'll behave this way. And now, 20 years was just enough to get a taste, not enough to build the infrastructure, the NGOs that help to do these things and help us to breathe out freedom. Look at how quickly the American people succumb to the idea of COVID and of losing civil liberties just based on fear that wasn't always supported by science or by data. I'm not saying that COVID doesn't exist. I'm not saying COVID's not a real disease. I'm saying some of the decisions that we've made, some of the actions we've taken, shutting down the economy, taking kids out of school, doing all these sorts of things, and then just giving up your liberties for that. So folks, I promise we're going to be back. We're going to do more. It's 11 o'clock Eastern time. There's a lot happening in the world. Pray for the Afghan people. Pray for our soldiers. Pray for American citizens everywhere, and pray for freedom. Pray for the idea that the republic here will stand. Pray for our troops and their safe return and their mental state be great. And yes, Cynthia says the silver lining. So the silver lining. Okay, Barney, I get it. And all right, I'm just going to pause to come back to Barney. And I love you too, Barney. So Barney says, I love you, Jim, but the U.S. government is the most crooked in the entire world. When you can change an election and let things happen, never be held accountable, we're doomed. So Barney, we are the government. I do truly believe that. And I believe that when we take action and we get out and we continue to talk to our neighbors and we do it in a way that convinces them or demonstrates to them evidence and shows them that there is a better way, that they'll do it. Most of the folks who I've talked to who were conservatives who voted for Biden now regret it. And they said, boy, I believed. And now they're saying it and they're going, oh my gosh, I didn't think that would happen. I just didn't think that would happen. We have a responsibility. And that was my point of Afghanistan. So the silver lining is that we in America have the opportunity to breathe in freedom and put out freedom and make sure that the rest of the world sees us as that bright shining light. All right, you guys have a great night. We'll see you